Welcome back. So we are in the fourth unit of the paper Environmental Education. So far in this unit we have covered the national movements which are instrumental in safeguarding the environment, and even we have seen certain strategies in enhancing the sustainable development. And let us see few issues, rather call them as treaties, which stressed on the environmental issues. The first one is the Stockholm Conference of the year 1972. The United Nations Conference on the Human Environment was an international conference convened under United Nations held in Stockholm in the year 1972. Some of the principles of the conference are the protection and improvement of the human environment, and to safeguard the natural resources of the earth, including the air, water, land, flora and fauna, and especially representative samples of natural ecosystems. The economic and social development is essential for ensuring a favorable living and working environment for man and for creating conditions on earth that are necessary for the improvement of the quality of life. The important outcome of the meeting was realization that environmental problems are essentially the byproducts linked to intense industrialization and the use of technology by the society, and therefore a scientific technical approach alone would be able to solve them. And the next one is the Brundtland Commission of the year 1983. The United Nations set up a commission to look at environmental issues in 1983. It was headed by the Norwegian Prime Minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland. It quickly became popular as a Brundtland Report. The Brundtland Commission researched into environmental and economic issues before publishing its final report. And the report is highlighted in terms of the idea of sustainable development as follows. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The report gathered different issues related to environmental problems and launched a comprehensive gateway to sustainability, which included social, economic, political, institutional, and environmental criteria. The concept of sustainability created an ongoing work with sustainability within the different spheres. And the next is the Nairobi Conference of the year 1982. The Nairobi Declaration was adopted at the 13th meeting of the session On 18th May 1982, the World Community of States assembled in Nairobi commemorate the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment held in Stockholm. The Stockholm Conference was powerful in increasing public awareness and understanding of the fragility of the human environment. The principles of the Stockholm Declaration are as valid today as they were in 1972. However, the action plan has only been partially implemented, and the results cannot be considered as satisfactory, due mainly to inadequate foresight and understanding of the long-term benefits of environmental protection. Threats to the environment are aggravated by the poverty as well as by wasteful consumption patterns. Both can lead people to overexploit their environment. The human environment would greatly benefit from an international atmosphere of peace and security. Many environmental problems transcend national boundaries and should, when appropriate, be resolved for the benefit of all through consultation action. Thus, states should promote the progressive development of environmental law, including conventions and agreements, and expand cooperation in scientific research and environmental management. Further efforts are needed to develop environmentally sound management and methods for the exploitation and utilization of natural resources, and to modernize traditional pastoral systems. Rational energy planning among nations or group of nations could be beneficial. Measures such as development of new and renewable energy sources will have a highly beneficial impact on the environment. The World Community of States solemnly reaffirm its commitment to the Stockholm Declaration and Action Plan, as well as to the further strengthening and expansion of national efforts and international cooperation in the field of environmental protection. The Rio Summit of the year 1992. The United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, held at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in the year 1992. The issues addressed in the summit include the systematic scrutiny of production of toxic compounds or poisonous compounds, including radioactive waste, reducing global climate change by finding fossil fuel alternatives, reduce vehicle emission, thereby pollution, and even the water conservation was considered to be the dire need of the day. The major achievements of the Rio Summit are the Earth Charter is an international declaration of fundamental values and principles considered useful by its supporters for building a just, sustainable, and peaceful global society in the 21st century. The Charter attempts to provide a new framework for thinking about and addressing these issues. The Rio Summit, or the Declaration, highlights the importance of the use of interdisciplinary managerial instruments for environmental management, and in particular, environmental impact assessment and environmental standards. The declaration stresses the participation of the students and citizens of all walks of life as an important ingredient of the effective policy development and implementation. It attributes particular roles to women, children, the youth, and the indigenous people. In Rio, various NGOs prepared and circulated several drafts, but no formal or United Nations Earth Charter was ever accepted. The Rio Declaration contains some key themes that are working their way into law. The principle that the polluter places responsibility for spillover damage from one country to another. The Rio Declaration, like earlier UN documents, still had many shortcomings, in spite of the major achievements of the summit. Considering the major achievements and recognition and finding a solution to the problems, the Earth Summit was successful in bringing environmental problems. The main features of the Rio Declaration are: it states that long-term economic progress is only ensured if it is linked with the protection of the environment. If this is to be achieved, then nations must establish a new global partnership involving governments, their people, and the key sectors of society. There are a number of principles to the Rio Declaration. People are entitled to a healthy and productive life in harmony with nature. Development today must not threaten the needs of present and future generations. Nations have the right to exploit their own resources, but without causing environmental damage beyond their borders. Environmental protection shall constitute an integral part of the development process. Eradicating poverty and reducing disparities in the living standards in different parts of the world are essential. Environmental issues are best handled with the participation of all concerned citizens. The polluter should, in principle, bear the cost of pollution. Sustainable development requires better scientific understandings of the problems. Nations should share knowledge and technologies to achieve the goal of sustainability. And another such declaration like this is the Kyoto Conference and Part on Global Warming of the year 1997. The Kyoto Protocol treaty was negotiated in 1997 at the city of Kyoto, Japan, and came into force in the year 2005. The Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement linked to the United Nations Framework of Convention on Climatic Changes. It is a legally binding agreement under which industrialized countries will reduce their collective emissions of greenhouse gases. Excuse me. Recognizing that developed countries are principally responsible for the current high levels of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere as a result of more than 150 years of industrial activity, the protocol places a heavier burden on developed nations under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. Coming to the significance of the Kyoto Protocol, also known as Kyoto Accord, is an international treaty among industrialized nations that sets mandatory limits on greenhouse gas emissions. Although the greenhouse effect is necessary for the survival on Earth, an overabundance of greenhouse gas emissions increases global warming beyond what is desirable. The purpose of Kyoto Protocol is to stabilize the human-generated emissions at a level that will not inflict further harm on the atmosphere. The Kyoto Protocol was adopted as the first addition to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, an international treaty that committed its signatories to develop national programs to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases such as the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, perfluorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride affect the energy balance of the global atmosphere in ways expected to lead to an overall increase in global average temperature known as the global warming. Although the Kyoto Protocol represented a landmark diplomatic accomplishment, its success was far from assured. Indeed, reports issued in the first 2 years after the treaty took effect indicated that most participants would fail to meet their emission targets. The Kyoto Protocol is thus overseen by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climatic Change. All 28 nations in the European Union have also signed the accord. Here we come to the end of the fourth unit. Thank you.